Hi there and welcome to Real Life in Real Estate. I'm Mike Peebles here to help you live your best life and achieve ultimate success. And I am so glad that you're with us today for probably my biggest interview ever. And that is this special day. I'm bringing on with me the person who has not just influenced my real estate career, but has had a pretty massive influence on my entire life, has been my greatest mentor, and has walked me through all of the great, fun, easy stuff in life, but has also been there for the hardest moments in my life. And so I'm pleased to introduce to you my dad, Mike Peebles.
Hi, thank you very much.
I'm so
nice
glad
to be here with you, son.
I'm so glad that I finally have you on the show.
Yeah, it's great. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, good. Well, you know, Dad, the reason I wanted to have you on the show today is because, the other day you were talking about giving an agent a pep talk. And the more you talked, the more I thought there are so many people that need to hear a pep talk from someone who's been through everything. And you have certainly had one of the greatest careers in real estate of anyone that I know. So let's start there. Let's start with this real estate career that you've had. You've been in it 52, maybe almost 53 years, in beginning of 2026, 53 years. Talk to me about that decision to get into real estate, and how have you been successful all of these years?
Well, it was getting into real estate was a scary time for me to decide to come into this business because I didn't know much about it. And but the one thing that I decided, if I was going to do this, that I was going to be one of the very best realtors in the industry. I decided a long time ago, before I even got started, that I was going to be one of the best. And I was determined. I had this determination that I've seen few people have, and that's the reason I've made it. And let me tell you, there were some tough times, though. I mean, there were times I needed a pep talk.
Yeah. Who in your early days gave you those pep talks?
Oh, I don't know. When I first came into business, what I tried to do mostly was I always spent most of my time with the people that were top in the industry. Those were the people I tried to be around. I tried to talk to them. I asked, "How do you do this? How have you made it to where you are? And help me out here a little bit. Things are slow, or I'm nervous. Well, tell me something."
Yeah.
So I would seek people that were better at it than I was.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
That's and I've seen you do that throughout my life and career, always seeking out advice from others. So you came in, though, in the 70s, right?
Yeah.
And then became a broker, early 80s?
No, I came in 1973, and I got my broker's license 5 years later. And several of us in Dayton that were top producers decided we would get our broker's license, so we all did it together.
And then the 80s hit.
Yes.
So what happened in the 80s? Because there's a lot of people out there that will listen to this that don't even remember. I mean, I was a kid during the 80s. I don't remember that. But what happened in the real estate industry for you in the 80s and nationally?
Well, back in the 80s, not only did the real estate market slow down, but also the stock market. I mean, the stock market almost had a crash back in that day. And I can remember meeting at my dad's house, and we were all really nervous about what was going on. And, don't ask me how, but I went right on through that market and survived and succeeded where other people were failing. And once again, it comes back to I decided that I was going to make it.
Yeah,
and I did.
So, but back in the 80s, right now, one of the big complaints in the industry that we hear from our agents all the time is interest rates.
Yeah.
So for those that think that interest rates are bad right now, what was it like in the 80s?
Well, let me tell you something. In the 80s, they raised interest rates to a point that their interest rates got up to 18%. And I really did have a hard time back in those days because there was a thing that happened called negative amortization. And interest rates were so high that people would buy a property and they would owe more on it by the time they sold the property because interest rates with the negative amortization was destroying people's lives.
So you weren't actually building equity.
No, you couldn't build equity.
Wow.
Back in those days, and that was probably the hardest time ever for me because I didn't have the heart to sell somebody something that they were going to lose money on.
Yeah.
Because that had never happened.
How did you even sell properties back in that day?
Well, it was very difficult. I probably didn't do as good a job back then, but eventually everything started taking hold and interest rates started dropping. Everything started making more sense. But I can remember that interest rates finally dropped down to around 12%. And today, 12%. But I'm serious. I used to sell houses all day long at 12%.
Wow.
Never gave it any thought. We thought those were great rates.
Yeah, right.
You know,
if it goes to 12% today, we're in big trouble.
Well, we are. I mean, with the attitude of people and everything, it's a different world today. But people made it work. And let me tell you, no matter what's going on, no matter how, even with the negative amortization, people still wanted to buy houses, wanted to buy real estate.
Yeah.
So
back to making that determination to be successful. My whole life, I've heard you use a term that you, if I'm correct, set your chin.
Yes.
So talk about where that came from, and then talk about the meaning of that.
Well, back years ago, my dad was a builder and a developer, which kind of went hand in hand with the business, with the real estate business. And I worked a lot with my dad back in that day. But my dad at one time became very wealthy. Now, I will tell you that he died. When he died, he was a pauper. He lost everything.
Yeah.
And but I can remember one of my dad's sisters told me that when Dad came to Ohio and got in the building business, that he had, she referred to the term as set his chin to be successful as a builder. And he became a highly successful builder in the Dayton, Fairborn area in Greene County.
Yep.
And so that's where the term came from. And that I suppose that's sort of where I got my drive from, realizing that he made a decision, he set his chin to be successful, and I made a decision that I was going to be successful at real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were you doing when you came into real estate, made the decision?
I was working for Ford Motor Company as a production foreman down at Sharonville in Cincinnati. And that was the hardest job I ever had in my life. It was, I started out with General Motors. I went through college, and General Motors paid for my college education while I started out running a machine. And then they put me on to production management. And so I ran production management of about 30 people, but I was looking for greener pastures, so I went to Ford Motor Company down in Sharonville. And it was interesting that General Motors had a very powerful union, and so did Ford Motor Company. The difference was that General Motors wasn't afraid of the union, and they managed General Motors. Ford Motor Company the management there was scared to death of the union. So when I went in down there, I almost got fired because I wasn't afraid of the union, and everybody else was. But it became a very difficult job for me. In fact, one day I was out on the floor and I was under so much pressure, and I couldn't get the people to work the production. I was walking to my desk out on the floor, and all of a sudden, my heart skipped a beat, and I started to drop, and all of a sudden it started beating again, and I made it to my desk, and I grabbed hold of the desk, and I said, "Dear God, don't let me die." And so I hung on, and then as time went on, I had a doctor tell me if you didn't quit your job at Ford, it was going to kill me. So then I came into real estate, and real estate killed me.
Well, it obviously hasn't, though.
No, it hasn't.
Because you've outlived, all of your siblings that died young, and your dad died a little bit younger, and here you are at 81, almost 82 years old, right? Actually, maybe by the time this airs, you'll be 82.
Well, I'll be 82 and on the 27th of this month. But you know what? All the while, when I came into real estate, and then I had some tough times in real estate. It wasn't always easy.
Well, you mean that you didn't get your license and then everybody just started calling you? That's what I thought happened when you. It's so easy to make money in this business, right?
Well, I'll tell you what. I spent most of my time. Whenever I would get scared, people ask me why were you successful in real estate? And I tell them the truth was the reason I was successful is because I was scared to death. I mean, I had 5 mouths to feed, including my own, and a family, and they were depending on me. But I was determined that I was going to be successful in real estate. And I had people say, "Why don't you go get a job?" I even had your mother tell me to go get a job, and I told her, "No, I'm not going to get a job. I'm going to succeed at real estate."
Yeah,
and I did. But I decided back in the day. Every day, every night, I would come home for dinner, but every night after dinner, I would go out. My goal was to talk to at least 3 people standing at their door about real estate and ask them for business. And I did that every night, 5 days a week, and went to the door, knocked on the door. People would come to the door. Now, it was people that I knew one way or another, but also I knocked on a lot of doors. I've had doors slammed in my face, but whenever I would get nervous, I would go out and work harder. I'd go out and talk to more people.
And you wouldn't always get business from it.
I wouldn't. In fact, I had dry spells where sometimes I didn't think I was going to make it. But I was determined I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to stop. And I didn't. I kept going. That's the trouble with real estate. Most people don't make it in real estate because they don't stay focused.
Right.
I was focused. I didn't let anything distract me. A lot of people, they get distracted in real estate. In fact, back in the day, the technology was coming on a little bit then. And while everybody else was learning all this technology, I was out digging for business, and then I would run into the office and tell everybody, "Hey, I don't understand this technology. I got a listing in a half an hour. Would you please help me?"
Yeah.
I had everybody helping me prepare so I could go out and get a listing.
Yeah.
But I was out selling everybody in the office.
Well, I'll never forget when I got into the business in 2006.
Yeah.
And you'd walk into the office and you'd be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm getting my list ready, or I'm prepping everything to make calls." And what did you always used to say to me about success? Do you remember you used to say, "Son, while everyone else is working on what they're going to do, I'm out doing it."
That's right. Yeah, I mean, people would talk about how successful they were going to be. I never talked about it. While everybody was talking about it, I was out doing it.
Yeah.
And that was the difference between me. And nothing was going to stand in my way. I was going to make it. And there were times, let me tell you, it wasn't always easy. I had a lot of tough times too. In fact, there were times that I didn't have enough money to pay the bills that were coming due, and I needed a cash deal that closed in a week to be able to make it, and to have enough money to pay my bills. And you know what? God would bless me with a deal. A cash deal would come along. I would have a closing. And let me tell you something. My credit, right on through the whole thing, I had good credit because I never missed paying a bill.
Yep. So how much has your faith played into your success?
My success, the only reason I'm successful even today is because of my Savior.
Yep.
And I spend a lot of time with Him, and He blesses me.
Yep.
So that's where it is.
Yeah.
Well,
and obviously that's part of the legacy that you've passed on, is that my faith it plays such a powerful role in my plays. It's the main role in our lives, right? Everything we do out of what we've been blessed with from our Savior, from Jesus and what He's done, and God has been good to our family. But I also believe that one of the reasons He's good to us is because we know that whatever we set our hands to is going to be, He's going to prosper it, right? And we've always, one of the things you taught me, you and Mom have been, you were amazing to teach me the power of tithing. You've always been incredibly generous. So, talk to me about the importance of generosity.
Well, I think generous people do better in society than those that are stingy. I know a lot of wealthy people, they're just as stingy as they can be. And I may not be as, in fact, I always say all my friends are wealthier than I am.
Yeah.
But, and I have some generous friends, but I believe generosity is the key to success. And you know, one of the big major things about your relationship with God, and so many people, they pray, they have success, and they forget to thank God. Never. I never forgot to thank Him and tell Him how much I appreciate it. And, that is such an important integral part of it all.
Yeah.
So.
And certainly something that you can see in the legacy of your family.
Amen.
So,
yeah.
I want to talk more about facing adversity, not just the adversity of the 80s or the dry spells, but I'll never forget the day, I believe it was August 26th, 1996. Do I have that date right?
Yeah.
I was out cutting grass. I had a mowing business that you and Mom set me up in when I was a kid. Like what my parents unleashed in me was this entrepreneur that they had no idea the beast that they were unleashing in me, but they taught me to be an entrepreneur, and so much of that is dedicated to you and to Mom. But August 26, 1996, I get a call from my mom, and she's hysterical. I had a cell phone back then, because of my mowing business, and she was hysterical. And talk to me about the events of that day.
Well, that was probably the hardest day of my life, and probably the hardest year of my life. But I had bought a property, a small property, and fixed it up, and Mom was with me one day because we had to sell it. And after we had the closing, I said, "Look, I've got to go preview this property over in Kettering, and would you go with me?" And she said, "Yeah, I'll go with you." Now you gotta understand that your mom generally was never with me when I was out previewing or whatever I was doing in real estate. But that day, she went with me, and when I arrived at this property, it was a house that was under construction, and the realtor was there to let me in, and the builder was working on sawhorses in the driveway. Now I didn't realize at the time it was the builder, but he was out working in the driveway on sawhorses, and so the realtor opened the door, let me in, and I said, "Well, let me run through the property." I had these clients coming from California, and they asked if I would preview the property. And I'd been showing them property, so I knew what they wanted. So as soon as I walked in the house, I knew that wasn't a house they'd be interested in, because I'd been showing them, and I knew they wouldn't care for it. But out of courtesy, because the realtor was there to let me in and everything, I went on ahead. I thought, well, let me go on ahead and look at it. So I ran the kitchen, which didn't even have the cabinets, and I ran through the house, went upstairs, and it had a catwalk from one end of the catwalk to the other, and they had bedrooms on either end of the catwalk. So I went to went both sides of the catwalk and came back, and for some reason I paused against this railing, and your mom was coming up the steps, and so I paused against this railing, and your mom came up the steps. When she got to the top, for some reason I reached back and pushed against that railing, and the railing fell. And you got to know I was 10 feet in the air. Now I stayed to that side because in the front side of the catwalk there was no railing, and but there was railing sitting on posts on either side. So I pushed against that railing. For some reason that railing fell. I pushed it off. and it all happened so fast that I was looking at your mom, and the only thing I could do, I just threw my hands up in the air, and I was gone. I fell over 10 feet in the air. The only reason I've lived through that is because I believe that was a case where my guardian angel was working overtime that day.
Yep.
But this builder used a hardwood floor that had deep grooves in it, and I've never seen a floor since, or before that happened, or since. I've never seen one. But I pushed that railing off, it lodged in a deep groove, hit against the drywall at an angle, and I hit that railing, and it flipped me in the opposite direction. And I think I was a bigger man then than I am now. I mean, I was probably a lot stronger. My upper body's doesn't have any tone anymore because I broke my back and I'm all fused together in here. And I had a 12-hour surgery. But anyway, I was on the floor and I was laying face down. When your mom ran down the steps, I was laying face down, and it knocked me out. And your mom knelt down beside me, and she thought I was dead, and all of a sudden I came to, and I was trying to get my breath because I had collapsed a lung from broken ribs. I had at least 8 broken ribs that they know of. But the only position I could be comfortable in was a fetal position. So I pulled up in the fetal position, and Mom thought I was having a heart attack because I couldn't breathe very well. And so in those days, in the early days, men would wear suits, for working in real estate. I had a suit on every day. And so your mom started trying to take my suit off, thinking I was having a heart attack. And I told her, I said, "No, honey, not now, not now." And so anyway, the ambulance came.
I have heard this story before, by the way. Okay, so go ahead.
So anyway, the ambulance came. They tried to strap me on my back, and I begged them not to because I was in so much pain, not realizing everything I'd done to myself. And so they said, "Where do you want to go?" I was 1 mile exactly from the Kettering Hospital. And I said, "Take me to Kettering." But so I went to Kettering, and it was from then on. It turned out to be one of the most horrendous experiences of my life.
Yeah. So your recovery. I mean, this was second day of my senior year of high school.
Yeah. I remember.
And the recovery. You were in the hospital for the first 5 weeks of my senior year. But I'll never forget that the whole time you were in the hospital, you were doing business.
I was. I sold 4 houses from the hospital bed, and people would come to. They would call me and they would want to buy a house, and I would have them come to the hospital, and I would write. Of course, in those days we wrote contracts out longhand, and I would write the contracts there at my bed, and then after I went home, I had a client that, in fact, while I was in the emergency room with this broken back and serious pain, a girl said, "I was going to call you today for you to show me houses." And I said, "Will you wait for me?" She said, "I'll wait for you."
Wow.
So she waited for me. And after I went home, they called, wanted to see a house. I had the agent who had the listing ask if he would show the house for me to my clients, and then they came to the house, and I wrote a contract at the house. So
Wow.
I did not stop. Now my income was down quite a bit that year.
Yeah.
From my first year after I fell, but the following year I had the best year I ever had in my life.
Wow.
And I didn't have any assistance, nothing. I mean, I just did it all myself. And I think back in that day, I sold $11 million that next year.
Yeah.
And that had been the best year I'd ever had.
Which sold $11 million, and then shortly thereafter, you'd always been active in the board, the local realtor board, but you continued that and increased your involvement in the local board and contributing back to the industry.
I did. I actually got on the board of the Dayton Area Board of Realtors, and I worked my way up, and they came to me. Somebody came to me and asked me if I would be president of the board, and I was scared to death. I didn't think I would do it, But they said, well, we would like for you to do it. And I said, okay. So I went up the chairs, and became president of the Dayton Area Board of Realtors. I was president. And I remember you were quite a bit younger,
Yep.
but my whole family was there that day, that night. But even after I broke my back, of course, I'm all you. If you see me now, I'm all stooped over even today from what happened because, they bolted me a little far forward. I had a 12-hour surgery, and I'm fused at the T6. But despite all of that, I never quit. I got very active in the board. I was on the board for probably 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
And all total, and very active in that. In addition to that, I still sold a lot of real estate all through that process.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've always thought was amazing about you, because I know you've seen it throughout your career, is that you get a lot of people, and I appreciate everyone who gives back to the community by serving at the board, and we definitely need that.
Yeah.
But you weren't just someone who did that, and was selling 3 or 4 or 5 homes a year. You actually did that as a top producer.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I always thought was amazing, because you look at so many people today who do serve. Again, I have a lot of respect for those that do serve, but a lot of them, they serve because they have lots of time on their hands. Yeah. You didn't always have lots of time on your hands, but you always made the time to give back to your real estate community.
And I loved doing that, and that's how much I loved real estate. In fact, I still love real estate to this day. Now, I don't do very much, and I don't do as much as I used to. But I still, I had a closing the other day.
Yeah.
And, I'm working.
Did I get paid on that? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm working on $1 million deal right now that I'm trying to get closed.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that so much of my career, when I've said I've got a big closing, you're like, do I get paid on that? So now I get to ask that question back. But so there's something that you always talk about: agents being their own worst enemy.
Yeah.
Because of the market that we're in, I want you to talk a little bit about why agents are their own worst enemy, and how do we change the mindset right now?
Yeah. Well, the reason I think realtors are their own worst enemy, is because when things get bad and everybody starts crying the blues and they start going out and whining to the public, the public ask people, if you're a realtor, people are going to seek you out and they're going to ask you what's going on in the market right now. And, the market has slowed down. It's a different market now. But some people start saying, well, I'm not selling anything. I've got all these listings, nothing will sell. And they start crying the blues, and that's not what the public needs to hear.
Yep.
And, they hear enough of that with the media.
Right.
But the strongest media in the real estate market is me as a real estate person. And what I say to the buying public, they pay attention.
Yep.
And if you're positive, yeah, you can be positive without going overboard. But I say, well, look, houses are still selling, and it has slowed down a little more. In fact, what's happened with this real estate market is it's become more of a normal market. This market that we're in right now is a market that I made a really good living.
Yep.
That's what it's all about.
And worse markets.
Yeah.
Think about that. Worse markets.
Well,
because, let's go back to another adversity period, 2008, which I've talked on this show many times about my experience in 2008, where I crashed with the market, but you didn't.
I know.
In a bad market. How did you do it?
I don't know. I think all the hard work that I had done just carried me through that time. I never missed a beat, never skipped a beat. Everybody was crying the blues about how bad the market was, and I was still selling houses. I had people calling me. I would list houses. I would sell houses, and I didn't miss a beat.
Yep.
But it depends on how hard you're willing to work. If you're willing to work hard now, this business will take care of you the rest of your life.
Yep.
Seriously. and people will call you. You've got to learn to follow up with your people. You got to learn to talk to people. And the one thing that is so important about the real estate industry is never lose sight of the fact that you got to go back to basics sometimes.
Yep.
I was never afraid to go back to basics.
What are the basics?
The basics are just, the reason most realtors fail is because they're afraid to do the one thing that will make them successful, and that's talking to people.
Yep.
It's just that simple.
It is. You
The
told
more
me.
people you talk to,
Yep.
splatter that mud all over the wall. Some of it's going to stick.
That's right. That's right. You told me early on. You said stop being a secret agent.
Yeah.
Right. You can't be a secret agent.
That's right.
You have to talk to people. And I remember. I mean, I have memories of when I was a kid where you would be sitting in your chair at night, your recliner, sitting in your chair at night with your cordless phone, in your hand, dialing the next number, just checking in on people.
Yeah.
And then I think you would always say, "Hey, if you think about me, would you send me some business?" I think you used to ask that question a lot. But I remember that as a kid. I remember you being engaged with people like that, where you would just sit in the evening when you had free time. Now, probably the reason that I remember it so well is because you became the expert at, well, it's really good to talk. Hold on one second for me. Would you shut up? Because, I was throwing a ball or I was whatever, right?
I was nicer than that.
Well, yeah, something like that. But you knew how to put your hand just over that phone and hold it against your chest and tell me to shut up, and then come right back to No, but I remember that. I also remember. I feel like I've watched you forge such deep relationships. Like you really cared about people, and I remember Dr. Stevens. The night that you found out he had cancer, and I was there when you made that call, and just talk to me about how you made those connections with people, because you taught me so much about being present, not because they're a client, but because they've become a friend, and it seemed like you did that so well in your career. One of the things I like to do is get out ahead of problems that come up for my clients when they move into their homes, because something is always going to go wrong. The water heater is going to stop working. Their furnace is going to go out. They're going to have a plumbing leak that they're going to be calling me needing help on. I love to be able to tell them, hey, we got you an Advantage home warranty as part of your deal. That's amazing, because now you can make one call or go online and file a claim with Advantage Home Warranty, and they're going to take care of the rest. They'll send a technician out to make the repair, or they'll put money towards a replacement if it gets to that point. So it takes off so much stress for me, for my clients, to know that I've got Advantage Home Warranty in my corner, and I carry one in my own home. I think you should too, and you should recommend it for your clients. So check out Advantage Home Warranty at AdvantageHW.com. That's AdvantageHW.com.
Well, Don, he was an anesthesiologist, and in his spare time, he liked to look at houses, and so it was an opportunity for me. He would pick out really expensive homes, and we'd go look at them. But he and I became very close, and we became very good friends. And then his wife called me one night and told me that he had melanoma, and that he probably wasn't going to make it. And I cried.
I remember it.
And I told her, I said, "Look, I'm coming over right now." So I got in the car and I went over, and I sat down and I cried with him, and I prayed with him. And then Don, as time went on, he got really bad. I mean, it was he was dying. I used to go over, and I would crawl up in bed with him, and I would sit there in bed and pray with him, and we would just sit there and talk. And I was just a friend with him almost up till the day he died. And to this day, I still know his wife. We're real good friends. Mm-hmm. In fact, I teach. It's like Sunday school, only I teach Sabbath school, adult Sabbath school. But she's in my class even today.
Yeah.
So
And it all started with business.
yeah, but that I'm not saying you should become good friends with everybody that you sell to, but if you want to be successful, you've got to stay in touch with people. Like you were saying, I would call people at night while probably everybody else was goofing off. I was sitting around on the telephone calling people every night. This was sometimes even after I'd go out and call on 3 people, I would come home, but I was constantly talking to people. And sometimes if the business was slow, I would ask people, it's what you say to people that's important.
Mm-hmm.
I would ask people, I'd say, look, things are a little slow for me right now, and the only reason I'm successful is because of you. Would you help me to be successful? And if you think of anybody that wants to buy or sell, would you have them call me? Or would you do better than that? Would you call me and I won't tell them that you gave me the number, and I'll call them.
Yeah.
And I was never afraid to call anybody.
Yeah.
And sometimes it wasn't the easiest thing to do either.
Right.
Calling people is not always the easiest thing to do. But it's doing the hard things in real estate that's going to make you successful.
Yep.
And it's really, if you do the hard things, it's going to get easier as time goes on.
That's right. When do you feel like you hit stride? Because, I know, because Mandy and Maren, that's my older sisters. They're 13 and 9 years older than me, and I know that my upbringing was very different from theirs, because you had kind of hit stride in your career as I was growing up. When do you feel like you hit that stride, though?
Well, I used to think, even though I was doing pretty well and successful, the real estate business was a very hard business.
Yeah.
It is not an easy business. This business is not for the faint of heart.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like I would, not realizing, but when I would leave town, we would come back from vacation. I'd be coming back in town on vacation. And I was real nervous about coming back because I knew I had to go back to work again. I was real nervous about that. So I said a little prayer. I said, "Dear God, I shouldn't have these feelings. This is what I do." And I said, "You're going to have to help me to overcome this fear that I have about the real estate business." And I think it was a fear of failure. And when I prayed that little prayer, something happened that I began to love the real estate business. I settled down about it. It became second nature to me. And I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying, but in the early years, it wasn't as second nature as it became.
Right.
And when that happened, I became a much better realtor.
Yeah. The power of it becoming
Amen.
second nature.
Amen.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, man, there's so many. There's a whole lifetime of advice that I can talk through here with you. But I want to ask you some questions that I ask every guest, and then I'm going to put you on the spot at the end. You don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I want to know, who's the greatest influence on your life and career? The person that you would say, Dad, if it wasn't for this person, I wouldn't even be here today. I know you've had a lot of great influences on you, so.
Well, I have, and I wasn't expecting that question, but I would say probably the greatest influence on my life was my dad.
Yeah.
Because in his day, he was a dynamo.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I told him I was coming into real estate, he gave me a lot of encouragement about it. And I guess that's the reason I felt really good about coming in, because I had this encouragement from him. And he was just very successful at building homes. I remember when I was a young boy, he would have these developments going with equipment running everywhere, and I didn't understand how in the world would anybody know where to put the dirt or anything about all the equipment and building houses and back in that day he had his own crew and he would every morning he would beat the crew to the job.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot about from my dad's work ethic. That's where I learned my work ethic, and I really think I passed it on to you.
Yeah.
All three of my children are workers.
Yep.
And I was a worker. In fact, I love to work.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you.
Yeah.
Your mom has accused me of being a workaholic, but I don't think so. I don't think she knew what was
Well,
going on.
you sit in your chair a lot now and watch a
Well,
lot of news during
I've
the
slowed
day.
down a little bit
Yeah.
these days. So
Well, and I think there's nothing wrong with loving your work,
yeah,
right?
nothing.
As long as you
keep it in perspective.
That's right. You have to control your work. Your work can't control you.
That's
Which
right.
real estate, it's really easy to let
Yeah.
real estate control you.
Yeah.
You know. Okay, so your dad's your biggest influence. If you were gonna go back all the way to your first year in real estate, and you could give yourself advice, what would you tell yourself?
Well, when I first came into real estate business, I was working for Ford Motor Company, and I only gave them 1 week's notice because I knew I wasn't coming back. I gave 1 week's notice, and I'll be honest with you, I had never sold a house when I quit Ford Motor Company. I had my license, never sold a house. I'd showed a couple things, and I'm serious. I hate to tell you this, but I cried all the way home. I was terrified. I just quit my job, no income. We didn't have a lot of money. And the very next day, I went out and sold my first house. The very next day after I quit my job.
Yep.
And it was to a police officer in Dayton. And he had a house on Norman Avenue down in Dayton off of Main Street. And he listed that house with me, and I sold that. And it was smooth sailing right on to that time.
So, but what would you tell yourself back then? Is there anything that you would say, Mike, be sure that you do this?
Well, I guess it'd be follow through and make it happen.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know, I would tell myself to follow through and you know, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen naturally. It's going to happen because you make it happen.
Right.
And so that's what I would tell myself.
That's good.
And I didn't. I would go to the office every day. Sometimes I wouldn't have any idea what I was going to do when I got there, but when I got there, I started working and started calling people. And I would make notes about people that I'd talked to. And then I would, all of a sudden, something would happen that I would think about. Somebody said this to me and that to me, and somebody wanted to sell a house and somebody wanted to buy a house. And I would call those people, but follow through and make it happen.
Yeah.
You know? And I believe that would happen, but I had to put forth the effort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to ask you this next question because I ask all the guests that come on the show. The question is this: what does ultimate success look like for you? And in this show, I talk about. I know you listen to the show, but I talk about. I want to help people live their best lives, which I believe is a life lived on purpose, doing what you're created to do, and then ultimate success, reaching your destination. When Mike Peebles reaches his final destination, what does ultimate success look like to you?
The one thing I've learned as I've gone through life is that the most important thing in life is family and your children. And I look at my family. Next April, my wife and I are having, your mom and I are having our 60th wedding anniversary. And marriage hasn't always been easy, but we've made it work.
Yep.
We didn't give up when the going got tough. But raising my children and seeing it and watching you, each one of you become successful. I mean, I've got a daughter, Mandy, that is, she's one of the top real estate agents.
She's a
in the
stellar.
business.
Yep, she's a stellar
just
agent too.
unbelievable.
Yep.
I don't know who outproduces each other, but I know both of you.
Well, of course I outproduce her,
I'm sure
right?
you do, but
and I can say that on this show
Yeah.
because no one knows to go check her data.
Yeah. But she was crying the blues this morning, and I told her stop being negative.
Yeah.
Be positive. Tell people that everything's going to be okay. The
Yeah.
house is going to sell.
Yeah.
And so I was telling her that this morning.
Yep.
So but sometimes we all need a pep talk. We all need somebody to encourage us
Yep.
and to bring us back to focus.
Yep.
You know, and so I don't know what did I
Ultimate success achieved through your family and seeing their success.
Yeah, and you know it's I don't know it's if you work hard, when you get to the place I am in life, you're going to be okay.
Yep.
And I'm probably not the richest guy in the world, but I'm at peace.
Yeah.
I think you need to be at peace. I think you need to you need to love what you do. And I pay attention to my family. I enjoy talking to you. We talk almost every day.
Almost
but
every morning, yeah.
You're a pretty hard guy to get a hold of sometimes.
It's because the people in this room keep me so jam packed on my schedule.
I pretty well figured that out. So.
Yeah.
But
well, let me ask you this: going back, what's a life lesson that you've had to learn the hard way that you wish someone would have told you sooner? I know you've had some hard lessons in life.
Let's see. I think don't cut short anything that you do. In other words, everything you do it right the first time. I learned when I was very young from my dad, and they were on a business trip, and we flew. My dad had a pilot's license on a small plane, and we flew somewhere for business. And he took his banker with him. And on the way back, they talked to me when I think I was probably 12, 13 years old, but I never forgot it. Whatever you do it right the first time, because you don't have time to go back and do it right the second time. And there's just not time if you have to go back and do it right. So stay focused, do it right. I'm a nut about detail.
Yep.
And
well, that was one of the things that amazes, because our minds are very different. We've had this conversation, and I tend to be on the whole spectrum of things, what you would call ADD, right? If we were really looking at the spectrum, which I think there's value in my type of brain, but it never ceased to amaze me that all those years ago, you'd have 10 transactions going, and you would know exactly what was going on in every single one of them.
I know.
And have the file basically memorized all the way through. And you are a nut about detail.
Well, I processed all of my own deals for years. I finally got an assistant later on. But I was never happy. Some people are happy having a listing, and they spend all this time on one listing, but they make excuses why they have to go do something on this listing, instead of making excuses why they don't have 10 deals in their folder. If I didn't have 10 or 12 or 15 deals in my folder, I got worried.
Yeah.
So I kept going out and making sure I had deals coming in my folder. There have been times where I would get down to having 1 or 2 deals in my folder, and I would start getting worried. But then all of a sudden, everything would start happening because of all the work that I did.
Yep.
And I'd fill that folder back up with deals.
Yeah.
And it was just something that was important to me. I had to have a lot going on. Like I said, a lot of mud.
Yep.
I slung a lot of mud.
Yep.
And when I first came into real estate business, if I got a contract on somebody's house, I would call them up at 11 o'clock at night and say, "Hey, I just got a contract on your house. Put the coffee on. I'm coming over." I'm serious. I used to do that.
Which I'm so thankful we don't have to do that anymore.
I know times have changed.
Yes.
It's not like it used to be. But people, when they got a deal in their house, they were excited about it too, and they were happy I was coming over. So that was what it was like
Yeah.
in the early years of my life, of my real estate career.
Okay, so do you have a routine, a morning routine that you go through?
Every day.
So talk to me about your routine.
Well, the first thing I do every day is I get up and I go sit in my chair, and I get my Bible out, and I study my Bible, and I pray, and I don't turn the TV on now. Now the other day Trump was talking about the peace thing, and I could, your mom had it on in her TV, and I could hear a little bit of what he was saying, but I said, I'm not going to turn the TV on. I want to hear what he's got to say, but I'm not going to turn it on. And so I read my Bible, studied my Bible, and I prayed. And let me tell you, if you want to be successful, you start your day by being in your Word,
Yep.
and your life will change.
Yep.
You will never be the same.
Well, I find it balances everything else.
Amen.
And the thing is that's different from every other guest that I have on the show is that you've actually modeled it my whole life.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I came down to get ready for school or get out the door and you were sitting in your chair with your Bible or your bedroom and you would be on your knees praying. The things that you modeled, I know that you lived out, and I've watched your success happen because of those things. Yeah. So I love that.
I can't get on my knees anymore.
Right.
It hurts.
Well, quite frankly, with no cartilage left in my 46-year-old knees, I really can't either. So,
Yeah.
Okay, so my entire life, there's been a poem that you have recited to me.
Oh my goodness, I don't know.
Now this is where I told you I'm going to put you on the spot. And see if you can recite it.
I don't know if I can impromptu like this, but there's a poem. Let me tell you, I was attending Ohio State, and I wasn't ready to go to college, and I was going to college really just because I wanted my parents to be proud of me. But I wasn't liking it. It wasn't for me. I wasn't ready, and I called my dad. And I said, Dad, I want to drop out of college. Can I come home? And he surprised me. He said, yes, come on home. When I got home, he handed me this piece of paper, and it was a poem that was out of the Xenia Gazette, and it was written by a guy by the name of Edgar Guest, and nobody would ever hear of him to this day. But I kept that poem in my wallet, and I would read it very often, and then eventually it became a part of me. And I'll see if I can remember it appropriately. I hope I can, because it's been a while since I've even thought about it. But it goes, do not be swayed by every breeze, to every impulse do not bend. Who gains his purpose by degrees holds what he wins until the end. 'Tis better potential to climb and stand sure-footed at the crest than to evade the price of time and at the last be depressed. Stick to your job and learn it well. For fear or pity gain beware. For one last year of morning's fear, keep this in mind, and from day to day, success is just as close to you as to some toiler far away. Be not content with seeming wise. The future is a hidden book.
Wow. I think that was pretty good. You still have it, Dad. You still have it. You have certainly brought that out at really pivotal times in my life. And the part to every impulse do not bend. Yeah. I think you had your challenges sometimes with me because as my entrepreneurial brain, maybe a little bit of the impulsive side of me, I always love to jump at the first thing. And I've done that a lot in my life. I think I've way settled down. Now, I don't jump at impulses as much anymore. In fact, I want to help people not jump at the impulse. But several years ago, I just lost my train of thought. We may have to cut that. But several years ago,
go ahead. I got something I want to say.
Several years ago, there was actually, I remember a time when you brought this up to me And it was in one of those moments where I was wanting to jump at the impulse, and you were saying, son, just stick with it. You're so close to success. Just stick with it. And so that, I know you've brought that out so many times in my life. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say that back, I probably would be a richer man today if it hadn't been you were the most idea person I've ever known in my life, and you would come to me with all these ideas about and they seemed like plausible, possible things that could develop into something, but it was going to take a little bit of money. So I would give you a little bit of money to try those. And I told your mom one time, I said, honey, Mark keeps coming up with all these ideas, and I said, most of them don't work and aren't going to work. But I said, one of these days he's going to hit on something, and when he does, I want to be there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well,
one of these days I am going to hit on something.
You have.
No, I'm kidding.
I think you have. You've hit on NavX Realty.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I am so proud.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time that I broker your company, and that you have developed this company from nothing to 130 agents, which is no easy task, on top of being a top producer in the industry. And it makes me very proud.
Well, you've told me my whole life that you're proud of me, and I can honestly say back, I'm proud that you're my dad. We're not allowed to cry on this show, though. So, yeah.
I'm trying to keep from it.
Yeah. Well, Dad, I appreciate you being on today. This has been a real honor, and honestly, I think it's great that the audience gets to see where I come from. Like, this is my legacy, and I also, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, I talk a lot about Mom and how, my mom taught me how to customer service people and do a job right. She cut grass with me until I was 16,
what do you mean
that
she
impact.
Did? You remember?
Well, I remember when my dad used to show up. Remember, he said he used to wear a suit, and my mom and I would be out cutting grass, and he would stop by, and you would have your suit on and your dress shoes, and you would be running a weed eater, which now I run a weed eater, and I'm like, I'm filthy. How in the heck?
I would get behind a mower. I would cut grass for you.
Yeah.
In a suit. I mean, I'd take my jacket off and everything, but I would.
Yeah. Well, I think that work ethic, that it definitely gave me the work ethic that I have today, which, if there's a message out of this, one, I think it's that you can't give up. You have to decide that you're going to be successful. So that's one of my big takeaways talking to you today. But the other thing is, you can't come into real estate and hope you're successful. Yeah. Right? You actually have to work. And I try to tell agents this all the time. When someone's new coming into the business, they've bought a house before, and man, they saw that big paycheck that the agent got, and it was easy. You make that much money and you didn't even have to do anything, right? And they have no idea how hard the work is. And it's not just the hard work to get a transaction to a closing table. Most people don't understand how hard it is to generate that one transaction, how many calls you had to make, how many times you had to get a door slammed in your face. It's not easy. But if you work hard and decide that you're going to be successful, that is where you'll really truly experience the success.
Well, people don't realize how much free stuff you have to do. You have to do a lot of free stuff along the way. I mean, they think that you're making this big paycheck, but they don't realize how much effort had to go into that to get to that free paycheck, supposedly.
That free paycheck.
Yeah. So, and I mean, it's there's a lot goes into it, and I always say, realtors are the dumbest people in the world because we work a lot for nothing.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. Yep. But you have to do that.
That's right.
To oftentimes earn
the
opportunities for paychecks.
That's right.
So. Awesome, Dad. Thank you for being on the show. Listen, we want to help you live your best life and achieve ultimate success. I can honestly say today that I'm living my best life, and it's because of this man sitting here, what he's poured into my life to help me discover and understand what my purpose is, and inspire me to go and inspire you. So that's what we're here for. And I do truly want you to live that best life and achieve ultimate success. So I'm inspired today. I hope that you are. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye now.